Yo, what's up, folks? It's your boy, Young Global. About to have a really great conversation today. Wait, Mikael, you in the room? There we go. What's up, folks? Thanks for joining. Waiting for Mikael to jump in. There we go.
Okay, we made it work.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. This is my first Instagram live, so pardon any technical difficulties.
Okay. What's up, Tim Tan? What's up, Corey? We see you in the house.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad I could be the first to introduce you to this platform. Um, Thank you for making time. Thank you for being part of this conversation. What's up, Brittany? Memphis in the house. I'm really excited to talk to you not only about the project that we're collaborating on, but also on your practice and just give people a little bit more insight on what you've been doing the last couple of years so they can get a full perspective on who you are as an artist. Hey, Corey, what's up? What's up, Philandis? Not only as an artist, but as a person. And I think, it's really exciting. You're based in Pittsburgh, and it's not a market that we always talk about with regard to contemporary art. And I just love what you've been able to do, not only as an artist individually, but just rallying the troops in the community, in the creative community. And so I think, just for folks who are coming in, we're going to chit chat for about 45 minutes and then leave some time for questions. But y'all know how this goes. If it's an IG live, there will be comments. Hey, Tangi. Some will be funny, some will be interesting. But I think, first of all, let's just start with introducing you to folks, just in case people aren't familiar. So if you could tell us a little bit about your background, what your upbringing was like, and how does that inform your current artistic practice, given that, you have an engineering background in addition to the photography and films that you make.
So, hi everyone. Thanks again, Larry, too. This is so great to be in conversation. It's been great working with you over the last few months, too, on this new project that we're working on. And so I guess a bit of background on me. My name is Mikael Owunna. I'm a queer Nigerian, Swedish American multimedia artist and engineer. I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I studied engineering in college, actually. And so the way I came into photography as my kind of my primary medium was due to the tension that I was feeling between my sexuality and my African identity. I was outed during high school, and then members of my family told me that this is not of our culture to be LGBTQ, and went through all these kind of ceremonies, all this stuff, like kind of really shaped my identity. You know.
Mm.
And so I kind of coming from that experience, I fell into like, this is like my freshman year at Duke. I saw one of the hashtag Duke gang in the building too. And so after I was struggled with a lot of depression and anxiety, and of my year, I found a camera. And when I picked up the camera, I felt like I found my voice again. And so
Mm.
at that time, I was able to kind of use that as a creative outlet for myself. I did photography as a passion and a hobby all throughout college. And then after college, I received a Fulbright scholarship and I moved to Taiwan for a year.
Oh,
And I,
wow. You didn't know that.
yeah, it's like a little
Wait,
background.
but why did you choose Taiwan? Because I know that you picked the place to do the research.
Yeah, so I picked Taiwan because at the time I was studying Mandarin Chinese, and
Okay.
um, Taiwan also has a really interesting Aboriginal community there that are the ancestors of all Polynesian people. So they're
Oh,
like
wow.
kind of the population, like I deal with a lot of like structural racism discrimination. And so I worked actually with the Aboriginal community there, teaching students, first and second grade students, photography while I was there.
Oh, oh, that's dope. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that was right after college. Yeah.
You learn something every day. So I guess how instructive was that experience for you? Because I know we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but with the Infinite Essence Project, Celestial Liberation, there will be workshop components. So it's something you've done before. So why is that important for you to utilize your skill set and teach young people that they also can have a voice or can find their voice through using a lens-based practice?
Yeah. So when I was in I think first of all, it was my own experience in college that really taught me that from a personal perspective. You know, just being able to like, I think even like we would go back to Nigeria like every Christmas, and when I was in Nigeria, you know, it's kind of you're back in the place where all these experiences that happened to you.
Yeah.
Like I would dive even deeper into photography each time and really be able to just create craft portraits, explore what Nigeria was from my perspective at the time. And so when I was in Taiwan is when I actually had a structure for teaching students and using photography as a way for them to explore their specific Aboriginal culture and tell their community stories. And so with the workshops we're going to be doing, I think it's a continuation. I think, you know, us being able to, you know, have the agency to tell our own stories is just so important. And I think that it was really transformational for me.
And so then that obviously then that makes sense in terms of my next question, because my next question was going to be about, you know, what, you know, besides finding your voice using the camera, what else called you to tell these stories? And so obviously you working with these indigenous Aboriginal communities in Taiwan, I think serves as a connective tissue to tell stories of, you know, Black and brown communities, whether it be in Pittsburgh or just people that you just encounter in your daily life.
Yeah, so with my work, I specifically focus on the Black communities. And so like, but for like that project, I want to like always kind of approach it from how can people tell their own stories. And so there I taught versus like documenting the community, I taught the students photography so they could tell their story. And so, but that was like a really formative experience because also when I was there, I had a mentor, Professor Christine Yeh from the University of San Francisco. And she was the first person who was like, you know, you're really good at photography. Like there's something there.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. She's like, you know, you should really pursue this in some way. And I'd never heard that before. I mean, I never even thought photography could be a career. I mean, you know how African immigrants can be. So I never even thought it was like a career option. And so that, I think coming back from that experience is when I began doing my LGBT African documentary work, which then eventually led into Infinite Essence.
Got it. And so given the resistance, I guess, from your family, I guess when you were in teens and your development stage of life, how do they look at your work, look at you? Have they kind of just like learned to embrace who you are? Are they responsive to the work? Are there dialogues around the work, dialogues around, you know, your life and who you are and who you've become? And also, we got to throw in there, if you're not familiar, Mikael also did a TEDx talk, which you should definitely check out. And you published a book.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because I know that's when we first connected, you had published a book. So I guess, talk to us about how your family kind of sees the work now. And then I guess it would be good to talk about the book and the TEDx talk, because you really galvanized the movement around the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so when I think in terms of the relationship with family, that was, I think, really transformed by the LGBT African immigrant series that I did. So when I returned from Taiwan, I went to the Carnegie Museum here in Pittsburgh, and it was the Carnegie International in 2013. And on display, they had the work of Zanele Muholi. And when I saw Zanele Muholi's work, was that a question? Yeah. But when I saw Zanele Muholi's work, it really just, I was really stopped in my tracks, you know, because I had never seen an image of another queer African person before. So when I was hearing that this was, oh my God, yes, hail the lion goddess, yes.
I actually just bought this book when I was at the Seattle Art Museum. So I thought you understand.
I stand hard. So when I saw Zanele's work, I almost was in tears because I'd never seen any images of like queer African people, and I was told that we didn't exist. And so when I saw Zanele's work, it inspired me to connect the dots to my own experiences in diaspora. And so I began working for the next 6 years on a documentary series where I worked with 50 LGBTQ African immigrants in 10 countries across North America, Europe, and the Caribbean, photographing them, documenting their stories, and then ultimately compiling that work into this book, The Limitless Africa. And so doing that process, I think even though I wasn't having active conversations with family members being like, hey, you know, I'm still gay. They were seeing all of this work being produced. And by seeing the work and seeing the stories of people who were having, like from across the world, who were having, like struggling with their family members or having these different experiences with their identity and reclaiming queer African identities for themselves, I think that also brought them along for the journey. So when I did a Kickstarter campaign for the work, I was getting like aunties and uncles, like $200, $300. I was like, whoa, okay, so we've all been on this journey together.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it's the oddity of African culture. I know it's different in every country, but it's like public facing. You have some folks who like they believe it's their job to kind of be like the what's the word? The morale police. Mm-hmm. But then privately, they're living life, they're doing whatever they're doing. And so it's great to hear that, you know, folks rallied around you and supported the project. Because I think it's important, particularly whether you're of African descent or other backgrounds, to know that there is support for you. If you are in the LGBTQI community or, you know, identify however you choose to identify, and that you're not alone. Because I think sometimes, like I was talking to some artists this morning because I'm advising on a Black trans mural project that'll be going on this summer, and like, you know, really helping people reaffirm that there's a community. You're not in this yourself. And I think by you not only speaking about it, and thank you, Corey, for putting the link in for the TEDx talk, but making work about it and showing that there's a multitude of folks who are struggling through this. Some are thriving through it, but, you know, showing that there's a spectrum of experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that a lot of people reached out to you to thank you for even like doing the work and vocalizing it, but then also telling your story that it wasn't simple, but it was important for you to kind of stand firm. I'm sure they had all types of really interesting rituals and ceremonies. You probably was like, what's going on here? But you know, you made it through. And thinking about ceremonies, I know that we've talked about it, much of the work for Infinite Essence, and it would be good to kind of showcase folks some of the images behind you and in the studio. Much of the work is informed by West African spiritual and cosmological systems. Can you tell us more about why the spiritual connection was important as part of articulating this project? One, and then I think secondarily, I guess after you show a couple of images, we can kind of geek out a little bit and get into the technical of how these photographs actually made.
Yeah, so when I was working on the Limitless African series was when I started studying and learning more about pre-colonial African societies, traditions, and religious systems. So even, for example, on the cover of the book, this is a symbol from Nsibidi, which was a pre-colonial writing system in southeastern Nigeria. And when I found it, it was sourced in 1911, and the symbol represents two women lying in bed together, holding each other. And so, you know, on one hand, from a contemporary context, I'm being told that, you know, oh, queer African people have never existed. But within our writing system, we had same-sex affection being discussed. And so from there, I also started learning about Malidoma Somé. And Malidoma Somé discussed how within West African indigenous cultures, queer people we would now identify as being LGBTQ were the gatekeepers to the spirit world. So the ones who were the healers, the diviners, the ones who were managing the gates, you know, and allowing our people to access and speak to the ancestors, etc. And so I started learning much more about African spirituality and the centrality of queerness within those spaces. And so that me when I was starting Infinite Essence work to be kind of reflected within that space. And so with Infinite Essence, I was really struck by the murder of Michael Brown in 2014 and how his body was left in the street. And then I just kept seeing all these images again and again of Black people being shot and killed. I mean, we have like George Floyd, Philando Castile, Antoine Rose Jr., Tamir Rice. I mean, just like this barrage of images. And I wanted to think about how could I transfigure Black bodies from being sites of death and state violence into like transcendent ethereal vessels of eternal life. And reflecting on the work from Limitless Africans around kind of indigenous African religions. And I was thinking about how can I connect each of these images to historical African ideas of Blackness as this divine source from which all life emerges. And so images that I craft in the piece or in the work are also connected to specific myths and legends from the Dogon in Mali and the Igbo in Nigeria. So like, for example, the image here and there, like that's actually a self-portrait of myself and like painting, etc. So those are kind of like the overall context that led me towards using African spirituality and mythological references in the bodies of work.
Dope. And then how are these images made? Because I don't know, is your phone on a tripod or?
Oh, I can carry it.
Yeah, if you want to just show folks, just in case people aren't familiar with your work, just a close-up of the work, and then maybe talk us through how the work actually comes to fruition, because I think it's important that they can kind of see it up close and personal in contact.
Hi, the Island Diva. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so here you can see, so these are some of the images from the series. And so for each of the pieces, what I actually do, so these are actually all photographs. And so when I begin, so these are printed on aluminum metal plates, and metal has a specific cosmological significance within West African cultures that connect us to substance that connects us to the origin of the universe. So yeah, you can see here. And so actually what I begin with is actually hand paint the model's bodies with fluorescent paint. So these are all individual paint splatters that I put onto the bodies. And then using my engineering background, I built a flash that only transmits ultraviolet light. And I turn off the lights, I click down on the shutter, and then for a fraction of a second, the ultraviolet light emits, and then the bodies fluoresce. And that fluorescence is then captured on the camera sensor. And so this is using an effect known as ultraviolet-induced fluorescence paired with fluorescent paints and onto the model's bodies ahead of time.
This is amazing. So yeah, I can see folks, how the donuts get made, how the magic happens.
Yeah.
And I guess what was like, how long did it take for you to, land on like the right way of doing it? Because as I said, you invented the flash, so I'm sure you had to kind of iterate a number of times before you got to images and a body of work that you were satisfied with.
Yeah, so at the time, I used to say a lot that for my engineering training, I would structure my photographic practice around the scientific method. So I would begin with a question, then I would pose visual hypotheses on how to solve it. And so I began by kind of that question of how could I recast the Black body as being kind of these celestial vessels. And then in order to do so when I first began, I started actually with projections, and I would project patterns onto the bodies. But what the projections would do was that, these are printed onto aluminum metal plates, dye sublimated aluminum metal plates. And
so there's no glass.
Mm-hmm.
It's just aluminum plate with the image.
It's just an aluminum plate. It's printed directly onto the
aluminum. Gallery, and then I think someone else. This is printed on aluminum plate, so it's not glass, it's not acrylic, it's aluminum.
Yeah. And so I began with projections, and then but the projectors would blow out the entire background as well. Then I tried light painting, and light painting, though, I was able to produce auras around the bodies, but not illuminate the bodies themselves. And so I went back to my, let me see if I can switch my camera. I went back to kind of like the drawing board, and I was actually looking at some of the images that had really inspired me as a kid when I was like struggling with my sexuality. And I was really into like Final Fantasy and video games. And so I was looking at those images of how they capture magic there while reflecting on the work of Chinua Achebe and his reflections on Igbo spirituality. And then it just clicked for me. I had like, I had like a moment where it was like I heard a voice that was like, put the sparkles on the body. And then I went through this like testing process of going and learning about glow in the dark paints, fluorescent paints, and then how I could build a flash that could transmit ultraviolet light that would then allow me to actually create these images. So that's how I kind of tested it over about an 8-month period.
And then is there a top coat? There was someone asking about what's giving it its I guess, iridescence or shiny quality.
Yeah, so it has, there's a glossy finish that's put on top of the work. Yeah, glossy finish.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so I guess how many images have been part of the series so far?
So publicly released or actually like produced?
Ballpark produced. Because I'm sure not many have been released.
Yeah, there's, I don't even know how many hundreds. I've made hundreds. Yeah, but I've only released like some of them. Yeah, so some of the ones people see are just a smaller subset of the overall series.
Yeah. And then so Infinite Essence, Celestial Liberation. So shout out to Orange Barrel Media, Corey, all the different partners. You can sit back down now.
Okay, I was going to show you all first too, like just like the chamber. This is where actually I do the photo shoots.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Oh shit.
So you can see here. These are actually like paint. This is actually the paints that were used for. I have a film that's going to come out later this year. So this is actually the set that background behind the scenes of the set.
Oh wow.
These are kind of, you can see some examples, and so these are even. Some of the paints that I use. So you can see the paints all fluoresce, and then these are what are actually applied to the model's bodies ahead of actually going into the image production.
Got it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show you all that.
And then so you have the model, the body's painted, and then I guess you shut the door, you know where they're standing, and then you just capture the multiple images.
Yeah, so I have the light on, I focus the light on, and then I have an assistant turn the light off, and then I press down the shutter, this ultraviolet light fluoresces the body, and that's then captured onto the camera sensor.
But so is this digitally or film?
This is a digital camera.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then you now have seen how this comes to fruition, and then now we expand into Celestial Liberation. And again, shout out to Orange Barrel Media. Shout out to all Spin, the different partners on the ground. I think Mikael, you know the list better than I do. I believe Bible Center, Silver Eye. This is dope for you guys who are listening and watching. The work is on display at the Pittsburgh Airport.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe tell folks about that. And then I think secondarily, like, you know, these works have been made, they've been, I guess, primarily to be experienced in an exhibition platform. So I guess talk to us about it in the airport, but then talk to us about what does it mean to expand the reach of this project, and it exists in public space. And I think it's about 20 sites all around Pittsburgh area. And it really is anchored by Juneteenth around the whole project. But I guess talk to us about the airport, and then talk to us about what does it mean for it to be in public space.
Yeah, so this was actually one of the amazing things that have emerged from like our conversations, Larry, was the thought process first around the work around being applied within public venues and also in digital formats, right? With like digital billboards, digital kiosks, etc. And so from there, I think from our initial conversations a few months ago, and then with connecting with Orange Barrel Media, Corey, etc., it really has kind of ballooned into something that's much, much bigger. And so this is going to be my first time publicly displaying my work as public art. And it's going to be showcased at 16 locations. So the locations are, there's the Pittsburgh Airport. There's a large scale vinyl that's 12 feet tall there. So when you get off, you're going to baggage claim, you can see there's 12-foot vinyl of one of my pieces there. That's going to be on display until September. The Pittsburgh Glass Center is also going to have work up through September. Silver-Eye Center for Photography has work on display through July. Bible Center Church is also in Homewood is also going to have work on display through September. And so have also really it's become a convergence of being able to showcase the work outside of the gallery and the museum. And so I think one of the biggest differences is that more Black people actually see the work. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's...
Yeah. No, but I think that's important to highlight, because I think a lot of times we do these projects and we kind of have our idealized vision. We don't always think about the audience. We kind of just say public. But, I think particularly in Pittsburgh, because this year will be the first year that Juneteenth will be recognized as a holiday, that we make sure that as many, Black and brown folks, queer folks, LGBTQI folks see the work, right? Because a lot of times what happens is we do these projects, it's in the press, but for me, and I think it just comes back to like my thoughts about access. And it's like, if the 16-year-old self, me, Bronx boy, doesn't see this thing, did it really happen? Did it really resonate? And so I'm really kind of fascinated about, all these different touch points that we've been able to find partners in. But I think, maybe talking a little bit more about the workshop, and then I think talking about the event with One Hood Media as well, because I think, and all credit to you, finding like people who really understood what the project was about, the overall goal and the mission. But then I think also inviting other creatives from the Pittsburgh artistic community to be part of this experience, and, using Infinite Essence, Celestial Liberation as a jumping off point, not only for you in terms of public art, but then I think now expanding the conversation around, work made by Black artists, but then also creating space for other people to be in the conversation and dialogue that might not have had the opportunity.
Yeah, so for the campaign, all of these activations have been converging in the month of June. And so June is also, this year is the first year that Juneteenth is celebrated as a recognized holiday in Pittsburgh. And so, being an African immigrant, I also wanted to kind of also bring in other artists, specifically knowing that we're having a lot of energy around this campaign, to bring in particularly like African American artists around Juneteenth in a larger celebration of Black art in Pittsburgh. And so we're going to be on June 18th, Friday, June 18th, with One Hood Media, collaborating, and we're displaying the work of 14 Black visual artists in Pittsburgh here. And I'm also going to have a workshop there with some Infinite Essence work. But this is also my first like curatorial project too, like.
That was great. No, it's like, I love how like you just took the bull by the horns, because it was like One Hood came, we had one idea that didn't necessarily work for the timeline, but then you crafted it into this beautiful opportunity to do workshops, show people the process, but then also, again, invite other artists to kind of be part of the conversation. Because one thing that I, sometimes can see, having spent time in Detroit when I was at MoCAD, is that there are not always opportunities for the community at large to showcase what they do and share what they do. And I think it was very generous of you to say, you know what, it's not just about me, it is about this community. And I think it's important to kind of like highlight that. And what's up, Jose? I saw Jose was in the comments. Corey said you're putting on for your city. I guess, and then in terms of the project, what are some hopeful outcomes that you would like to see? as a result of putting this project together?
Yeah, so with it being the first public display of the work, first of all, I'm just really excited to see people's responses because it's going to be at 16 sites across the city. It's going to be a lot of eyeballs, right? So I'm excited for people to engage with the work and also to use it as an access point to learn about the African mythologies that are really at the core of it. So thinking about our indigenous African understandings of blackness, right? It's not black, that's flat socio-political construct, but this divine cosmic force that generates life in all existence. So that's what makes me excited as an entry point for people to spark and engage in additional conversations that bring in these celestial narratives of blackness that connect us across space and time. So I think there's on that point, there's that. And I think just being able to, first of all, so there's in terms of the community activations, there's the larger celebration around Juneteenth with One Hood Media on June 18th. It's going to be from 4 to 8 p.m. There's going to be free food, DJ, everything. So everybody come through. We're going to be posting soon. And I'm also doing a workshop with 12 middle school youth with Bible Center Church in Homewood at the beginning of June. So I'm gonna talk about my practice, talk about my work and my own journey, and then also guide them through kind of a workshop where they get to also produce their own kind of Infinite Essence themed works themselves. And so I think these are all just different avenues that, for young, like other artists in the community, young Black artists to kind of also build their own platforms and to also have access to kind of these other ways in which I'm thinking about art and art creation. So,
and then before we get into questions, could you also share? So we're going to do the project. It's going to be amazing. But could you share also what else are you working on? What people can thank you. Look forward to in the fall.
So in the fall, so this is going to be announced soon.
Exclusive.
Exclusive. So yeah, I'm going to have my first solo gallery show in New York this fall. So look forward to that. Everybody in New York, I'm going to be there, so it's going to be amazing. I'm super, super excited. I'm also going to be releasing a new body of work there and my film. So I've been working on a film for the past year, and an Infinite Essence themed film that will also be released at the solo gallery show. So that's going to be in September. And then in November, I'm going to also have a sneak peek gallery show in Los Angeles. So that's also coming up in the fall. So East Coast, West Coast will both be getting some love, so.
You say the gallery for New York or not yet?
Not yet. Yeah.
So there you have it, New York, LA in the fall. Pittsburgh pretty much from now until the end of June. Mm-hmm. And then I guess if there's questions, please put them in the chat. Jess, I guess Jess is disappointed. She has to wait on the information. Well, if you sign up for the mailing list, you'll be the first to know. But I guess if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'd love to hear, your thoughts. Thank you for joining us. I'm really happy that we could have this conversation and really kind of begin to amplify this project for a broader audience, because I think starting in Pittsburgh and then hopefully being able to bring the project to other markets. Lucy, we cannot announce the LA location yet, but it is in November. So again, if you sign up for the mailing list or if you're following Mikael, you will be the first to know. But are there any questions in the chat? Please put them in there. And I guess I have a question for you. What was the most challenging part of building out this series? for a public? Because I know
Hmm.
it's a different mindset when you're making it for a gallery or, you know, an institutional presentation, but this is for the city. So I guess how did you have to recalibrate? How did you think about what works you felt would be best articulate the ideas around the project? What was the selection process like?
Yeah, so I think a few things, right? So I think first of all, I think there was first of all a big thank you to you working with you on this project and this process and helping even kind of usher it to make it possible. It's just really just been so amazing. I think there was one aspect was kind of the selection of work and finding sites and finding locations that also really believed in the work and believed in the mission. I think the other part about doing public work that was very, very different was that, I've been just so like moved and inspired by the work of the ADOS movement, American Descendants of Slavery, led by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, and seeing how their discussions of the specific, interaction as a Black immigrant with holidays like Juneteenth and how I could, use this project as a way to also bring in other artists, that particularly African American artists, and help in terms of like building platforms for their work around this activation. So I think that was the biggest recalibration, to also make this something that would also serve the community and the wider community of Black artists, specifically African American artists in the city of Pittsburgh. So that was something that I really learned a lot about from working on this project.
So, and then we had a question. Someone was it Brittany? Yeah, Brittany, who's in Memphis, was asking, what are you reading? And I guess notes on the titling.
Oh, what am I reading right now?
Yeah. And if there are any notations, I think we kind of threw around. I mean, Infinite Essence is the name of the series, and I think we just talked about celestial liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, when we look at these bodies, these are celestial bodies, these are spiritual bodies, but then also what does Juneteenth mean? Because for me, freedom and liberation are two different things, and so that was kind of the impetus in terms of suggesting that title. But I guess if you want to share what you're reading and what the title means for you, particularly because of the date on which it will really kind of be anchored around, and the other collaborators will be part of the project.
Yeah. So what I'm reading right now, so over the past year, it's been a lot of research specifically around Igbo spiritual systems and Dogon spiritual systems. So, for example, one of the books that I completed recently was The Pale Fox by Marcel Griol and Germaine Detalin, which discusses Dogon religion and religious beliefs. I also recently completed reading a collection of Jay Wright's poetry. He's an African-American poet who did a lot of syncretism between African-American traditions, European traditions, Native American, and also Dogon and Bambara spiritual traditions. And right now, actually, I'm reading the work of Ra'an Nefer Amen, Metu Neter, Volume 1, which is a revival of ancient Egyptian Kemetic spiritual system and an oracle that's for the Asara Set Society. So been learning a lot about spiritual systems and the ways in which I think particularly what's really touched me, and this kind of touches on the title too, about celestial liberation, is that learning about African ideas about art, and art was always connected to mythology, science, and religion, and art was a way that integrating with these systems, we could divine and elevate human consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. So how can the work of the series, my work that I'm producing, be used as a way to elevate human consciousness? I think is one of the ways in which I think about liberation and that celestial aspect of it. And so I think that's connected kind of across the campaign to the mission and all these activations over the course of June. And then also all of the artists who are joining us for the One Hood Media event are also all bringing in their own ways of kind of accessing art from their perspective, from such really fascinating, just fascinating angles that I think are also really connected to that same vision. So I think collectively, it really speaks to this idea of us transcending and elevating our collective consciousness, particularly as Black people.
Thank you. So we have another question asking, how do you see your work in conversation with other artists like Alina Victor that's also kind of exploring the cosmos and Blackness through the practice? I think with Lena, gold is an essential component. And I'm sure there probably be other artists that you respond to and feel like the work is in conversation with.
So I stan Lena Iris Victor. I love her work. I adore her. And I think also I was listening to one of her talks recently, and she talks about prima materia, like the first substance, dark matter. And I think also discussing gold as this cosmic substance. She uses also Dogon symbology within the context of her work. So there's a lot of conversations there that I feel like a lot of resonance with. Another artist who I was exposed to recently, whose work really touches on these themes, his name is Kajal, and he does these.
That's my guy.
You know him?
I've known Kajal for over 10 years.
I'm a fan.
I'll have to introduce you. No, I've known Kajal since he was at Hunter.
Are you serious?
So, like, it definitely makes sense in terms of like history, this kind of recombining history to create new histories.
Yeah.
And then there's definitely an exactness and precision with how he renders the figure, which I think is very similar to how you're rendering the figure using photography. Yeah. So yeah, I'll introduce you guys.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
No, but definitely it makes total sense.
Yeah, so I think artists in kind of that vein. So Lena, I think also recently I was talking with one of my friends about David Hammond's body painting.
Yeah.
Also an interesting conversation. So that's another series that I'm interested in learning much more about, because I do think there's a potential conversation there. And another, from a photography perspective, Adgar Cohen's, he has some really interesting surrealist work and surrealist photography that I think also kind of is a way of kind of like contorting the image and contorting what our notions of a photograph are. Because I think, as somebody even said in the chat, they're like, I thought these were like kind of digital paintings or whatever. And like, it's like, these are photographs. And so I think seeing Adgar Cohen's work that kind of really manipulates the photograph also is another, I think, another conversation with the work.
And then we have another question. Just talking about how have you navigated, I guess, what are challenges and opportunities that you found just navigating your practice? It's a lens-based practice. So it's a little bit different than if you're making, paintings or sculptures. What have you found to be, I won't even say challenging, but rewarding? Because I feel like the challenges is where you find growth. So I guess, where have you found growth in this journey of being an artist and then now a filmmaker with the movie coming out in the fall?
Yeah. Whew. So in terms of the, I would say kind of there's a few things. I think, first of all, coming from an engineering background, I think even just getting my bearings within the art world was difficult. So I think even just, like meeting people, getting to portfolio reviews, because I didn't go to art school, just kind of getting a network whatsoever was an opportunity that presented itself really early on to me. I think also, as I've moved into more multimedia works, sometimes with like in really traditionalist photography spaces, I think people are a little confused, to be honest. They'll be like, I think people will be like they're like, oh, these are photographs. I think they'll be really interested. But I think the modality around photography for many traditionalists is so centered on like Henri Cartier-Bresson, Edward Weston, Man Ray, and all these like really traditional, much more traditional photography. Not saying that there aren't.
But how do you use the practice to kind of like expand people's understanding that that's not the only way? That there are a multitude of ways to use the lens, the camera, as a device to capture the body, the device to tell stories, tell uplifting stories. Like, how do you navigate that when someone is like, you know, in a studio visit and really didn't do their research and they're like, oh, I thought these were Photoshop?
Yeah. I try to focus on explaining the method so that people understand how the photographs are created. Because I think if somebody sees something like this, I don't think the first thought necessarily that comes to people's mind is, oh, this is a photograph. And so I think there's that way, and I think what's really exciting there is that there's a way in which photography is construed as presenting objective truth and objective reality. And so when people understand the work as photograph, it has a way of pushing our understanding of what reality is and what that means specifically around the Black body. And so that's what I think is like a really always exciting moment. Even when I show people like behind the scenes videos where it's like people can see, and there's one on my website if people want to see on the Infinite Essence project page. It's like the very last slide. There's a little video that people can see. But when people see that, I think there's this excitement. People are like, oh, they see this celestial body emerge from the blackness and disappear. So, and then that's captured on the camera, so they can literally see the camera there. So that, I think, is a way in which there's a rearticulation of what photography can be and can represent, but that's also connected to, I think, the spirit of a lot of like surrealist photography. Like I was talking about Edgar Cohen's is like surrealist work. I mean, Edward Weston's kind of also has like his the surrealist bodies of work, etc. And so I think it's also kind of pulling on those traditions and also kind of, I think, expanding on it with the specific methodology and the African mythologies that are being engaged.
Just want to time check. We got a couple minutes. If you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. Beyond obviously the shows that are coming up and film, what else are you thinking about either for this project or just in the practice in general that you would like to investigate or explore moving forward?
So with the film is an experimental movement film that features two Black dancers and like a choreographed dance performance, reenacting an Igbo myth of the creation of the universe. And so from that perspective, I'm really excited about performance and like live performance of the work. So people can literally see these glowing bodies and interact with them. I feel like that's something that I'm really excited about, and that the film is a part of that journey too. So I think there's like, I think people also, when they see the work, people will say a lot, there's a performative aspect. So I think a performance, literal performance, that would be really, really exciting. So, you know, if there are galleries out there or spaces that want to host a live performance, you know, let me know.
There are any dance spaces? I know there are dance spaces in Pittsburgh, but like, have you thought about, you know, choreographing something in Pittsburgh? Or I know in Memphis, Brittany's there. Memphis has the, I think it's called the Collage Dance Center. It's a really beautiful space, 5 studios, like Black owned, state of the art. Like I did a tour when I was in Pittsburgh. Shout out to Tone and the collective. They took me through, and I was just like, oh shit, this is legit. Like, it's not like, it's legit. What's up, Bagel? St. Louis in the house. Wait, I love hearing from Black artists. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions. But I think that's interesting. You know, like, I think about like an artist like Okunwi, who she's like, you know, raised in the Bronx like me, living in Brooklyn. And oh, sorry, yes, Collage Dance Company. Thank you for clarifying. Located in Memphis. Incredible dance company. I mean, they didn't spare any expense. They built the space from the ground up. I mean, they got showers, like, you know, it's legit, and it's inspiring to see. But yeah, I mean, I would be excited to see you explore that. You know, even if it's just like, again, thinking about public space, or if there's a dance company. I mean, I could definitely see you like directing something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that's what's kind of exciting about um, your journey into this, is that you don't have to necessarily follow a particular protocol, because it's like you're being led by your intuition, you're being guided by particular interest, and it's allowing you to kind of work in a multitude of creative ways and modalities. I think if you probably had formal training, maybe limited sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So I just want to time check. Any last questions? Infinite Essence, Celestial Liberation. Do you want to name some of the sites again?
Yeah.
Because it's 16 sites around the city of Pittsburgh. It's already started, and some will be on view until September, which is amazing. The core of the project and our collaboration in partnership with Orange Barrel Media. Again, thank you to Corey, Pete, the team there. Will launch around Juneteenth and be up until the end of June 31st. So I guess if you want to run some of those sites again for folks who are in the Pittsburgh area or plan to be there. Thank you, LNS Gallery, Miami in the house. But if you just want to share some of those locations again, just so folks know. And then I guess if you want to put in the chat your website, I guess for people who want to follow you.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll turn it over to you on those sites and locations.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to type my website. Okay. So the different sites we have, the ones that are currently up are at the Pittsburgh International Airport. There's a 12-foot vinyl there that will be up right when you get off the tram. I forget what it's called, like the train.
Yeah.
To baggage claim.
Nice. So everybody's gonna see it.
I think you have to be on the left train, because there's two trains. I think you have to be on the left side. But yeah, I think many people are seeing it. I think they've been texting me. So like Pittsburgh International Airport. There's also work that's going to be up currently up at the Silver Center for Photography, up until July in their window gallery on Penn Avenue. Also, additional sites include the Pittsburgh Glass Center, which will have vinyls on display in their windows starting in June through September. In Homewood, the site will be an Everyday Cafe, where Larry and I will also be hosting a Juneteenth-themed brunch and conversation on June 19th. That Everyday Cafe will have 2 vinyls on display in their windows, and then we will also have...
And it's 11 to 1, right?
Pardon?
11 to 1 o'clock on the 19th?
Yes, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mm-hmm. And the big collaboration we're also having is with Orange Barrel Media. And so with Orange Barrel Media, there are 4 digital billboards on the highway on Route 28, right on that exit to Route 8. Pittsburgh people, when you're trying to get to Etna, right before the Highland Park Bridge, there's Orange Barrel Media has 4 digital billboards there. And so we will have Infinite Essence works will be on display on those billboards, in addition to can we name the other partner? With Spin, there will also be kiosk, like the bike kiosk, some of the digital billboards, the digital bike kiosks, like East Liberty, South Side, etc. Will also have about 10 locations. Will also have Infinite Essence Works up for that 2-week period too. So that's going to be the 16 sites going from the Pittsburgh Airport to Homewood Everyday Cafe to the digital billboards that we're also going to be working on.
Yeah. So if you're in Pittsburgh, we got you covered. It's pretty impossible for you not to see this. But I'm super excited and honored, and thank you for the invitation to collaborate. Mikael, thank you. Corey again, Orange Barrel Media, all the partners that were highlighted. It's important that this project come to fruition, but it's also important that this project is seen in public space, right? In cities like Pittsburgh, where Black and brown folks can see themselves, one, but then two, artists have an opportunity to kind of articulate a vision and a point of view to a general public. And that, you know, coming out of COVID and transitioning into whatever the next phase of life will be, knowing that art is still a vessel, a vehicle for healing, for education, for exploration, and also for dreaming. So thank you again for collaborating. Thank you all for joining us today. Mikael put his website in there. You can follow both of us. We'll be announcing, you know, different phases of the project. And again, if you're in Pittsburgh, please pull up. One Hood Media will be doing an event on the 18th, and then the brunch on the 19th, 11 to 1. And so there'll be also multiple opportunities to see the project, but then also to engage with us and be in conversation. So we're really excited, and gratitude to everybody who showed up today. I'll post this in my feed. Share this with your friends. This is about amplifying the message of love, spirituality, visibility, you know, being seen, and storytelling, telling our stories, you know, particularly from an African American, Black, however you identify, point of view. So until next time, thank you, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Larry. Bye, everyone.